Excellent.
Welcome, Jess. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Exposure Ninja Digital Marketing Podcast live. We have a killer episode today. I was just saying to Jess, since one of the main things we're going to talk about this week, it's been just occupying 100% of my mental RAM since it came out, and I can't mentally sit still. So I'm absolutely desperate to get stuck into this week's episode. Jess, how you doing? Do you want to introduce yourself for people who don't know you?
I am. My name is Jess. I am a digital marketing fiend. That's the word of the week. At Exposure Ninja, I work in the internal marketing team.
Yes, Jess is responsible for a lot of the stuff that you see from Exposure Ninja, a lot of the stuff that we produce. Great. Digital marketing news. Jess, kick us off.
Well, first of all, we had a very nice awards win at the UK Search Awards last Wednesday. Very, very nice. We won Best Local SEO Campaign from a large business, which was really, really, really nice. It was a busy night, lots of awards, lots of big players. And so it was really nice to come away with that one. It felt really, really good. We also got a silver, but unfortunately, the thing that we got a silver for has absolutely left my mind at high speeds. But I know the name of the business that we got it for.
I think it was B2B marketing that we got silver for.
That is the one. Yes,
right.
That's the one.
Right.
But yeah, it was a really fantastic night. Loved it. Really great. Nice to see us getting recognised for fantastic work.
And we beat for the best local SEO campaign large. We beat stuff like Homebase, Visit Scotland, one other like huge multinational corporation. Like, that's my favorite thing about these awards, is that they judge the campaigns based on what you actually do. So this isn't like, oh wow, they came up with this really creative activation for KFC. It's like, all right, who got the best results and like what was the process that you used? So yeah, that was really, really cool.
Completely.
Love winning awards.
Yeah. Had a colleague say at the time, oh, we won't win an award because I don't know any of these businesses who we've heard winning so far. And I was like, they probably feel the same way about us. Unfortunately, we know about us because we are us. But yeah, so I was like, I already feel pretty positive about our chances. And yeah, we won a pretty awesome award for something pretty specific, which I like as well. So
yes,
yeah,
we know about us because we are us. That's my favorite quote so far.
Indeed. But the next part of our marketing news for this week, which has been a heavy debate topic for me and Tim before we started this podcast, was about a new AI software called ChatGPT. Now, I think Tim knows a bit more about the logistics and the more technical side, so I'll let you explain exactly what ChatGPT is.
Yes, I'm by no means an AI expert, but I think at this stage very few people are. But this ChatGPT thing has really caused quite a stir, hasn't it? It's so for those who don't know anything about this, let me just give you the sort of basics. So there's an AI company called OpenAI, and they've made these different sort of language models, and the most current model is GPT-3, and there's a new one coming out called GPT-4. But these are basically the underlying technologies. And then they've released this sort of sub-platform called ChatGPT, which is basically, it's like a messaging app, if you like, but you're talking to the AI. So you can ask it anything. You can ask it, what should my vitamin D intake be if I'm a 36-year-old guy who doesn't get out much? And it will give you an answer. And you can do this for almost any question that you can imagine. There are some limitations, and particularly with the ChatGPT side, there are some limitations that there aren't in the main GPT-3 playground. But this has blown people's minds. I think for a lot of folk, it's the first time they've ever seen a hint at the capabilities and the disruptive potential of AI. So this thing can write script, it can write code, it can write poetry, it can tell you a bedtime story, it can combine different inputs from different things. If you say like, tell me a bedtime story in the style of a redneck Eminem, then it will do a reasonable job of having a crack at it. And the implications for marketers are absolutely huge, almost difficult to comprehend huge, which is why my brain has been running on overtime since I've been playing with this thing at the end of last week. I think a lot of people are terrified by it, for the potential implication on jobs, for the potential implication on the disruption to people's work habits. And I think that terror is 100% justified. This is the most disruptive technology I've seen. This is when I started my career at Exposure Ninja and built Exposure Ninja, we were essentially taking business away from Yellow Pages and feeding it to Google, right? That was a paradigm shift. And this is the first thing that feels like the next paradigm shift forward. So yeah, I'm just, my default is to get super excited about these things and look for all the opportunities. So I'm absolutely fizzing for this. Jess, I think I'm right in saying I don't think you feel this same level of excitement. Is that accurate?
I don't. And I have to say, I said to Tim, I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle because I've seen the impact of AI in the art community and design community. And it has been a little bit scary and to some extent unethical in terms of the practices they're using, for instance, feeding art from artists without permission into, the software to train it. And then people are then using it to make their own art, but it's not, based upon other people's stuff. I've even seen people post brand new art that they've made, like, people who aren't big artists, and then somebody will respond to them. They've put it through an AI and made something better. And it can be quite heartbreaking, to say the least. And also, like I said, there's the ethical side. So I'm very conflicted on it because there's also the potential of taking jobs. And I know that sounds really silly. And I know there's a worry that it's going to sound like I'm using buzzwords, but it's like, okay, cool. If everybody starts using AI, then what happens to the content marketers? What happens to the video script writers? What happens to all these people? So I do think it is very scary. I've seen some of the stuff that's come out of it, people scripting content for YouTubers, for instance, and what is coming out is practically the same as what you would expect from that video. So yeah, a little bit worrying in that regard. I've also seen some comments, for instance, from Phil just said, as a Japanese English translation business, AI is a disaster, which I totally understand, because AI will be able to understand the nuances. And this is one reason why it's rivaling Google, as Tim was saying, because it can pick up on your intent a bit better. But I would also argue that Google has been doing a lot to focus on intent and be able to give you the best results for what you are searching for. But what we're finding is that AI is doing it in almost a more human way. I've seen some comparisons where I'm like, yeah, the results that people are getting from ChatGPT are better than what they're getting from Google, explaining things in a way better way. But it is just very scary. And I saw a comment from Sam saying, do you think AI generated art is a little unwholesome? Does it look a little bit uncanny valley? Well, I will say I have seen some stuff this week that is indistinguishable, which is where it starts to get a little bit worrying. So yeah, that's my take on it. We're coming at it from totally different sides, Tim, which I think is really, really interesting. And I think my main thing for marketers is, if you are using software like this, do your research. I've seen so many content creators this week using AI art software, and then people saying, hey, this is actually unethical, and then them going, oh, I didn't know. And it's like, okay, cool. Do some research, please.
I think there are so many unanswered questions like that, aren't they, about ethics, about who owns, so like ownership and licensing and all of that type of thing. And it feels like a lot of the laws that we have in place around copywriting and stuff like that really aren't built or optimized for a world where AI is potentially, such a significant, or could be such a significant force in all of our lives. So it seems like there's going to be some really difficult conversations there. And it's almost unimaginably disruptive, I think, at this point, because you can either go down the route that, like James is saying, unless it's a search engine, Google has nothing to worry about. Well, it potentially is a search engine, and the ChatGPT thing has limitations. If you go into the GPT-3 playground, you can say to it, find me 5 local accounting firms, or find me the 5 best accountants for a small business, and it will give you answers. So in that sense, it's directly taking on Google. The ChatGPT thing is a bit more limited. They don't sort of search the internet for stuff, but this is potentially a direct competitor to Google. I think for marketers, I've been thinking there's a sort of a few different ways that this is going to disrupt us. Firstly, as an alternative to Google for informational search. So a lot of the stuff that we do for clients, a lot of the areas that we've had success for clients, is building massive amounts of content at the top of funnel, so that people who are starting to research some different options, they're at the very start of their purchase journey, can get information on our client sites, go to our client sites, we convert them, sign them up to an email list, and build a relationship with them over time. That flow, if this becomes mainstream, that flow is totally disrupted, because rather than going to Google to do your top of funnel research, you will go to this tool, and the research, it happens in a completely different way, right? Let's say I wanted to find the best external mic for my phone so I can make TikToks with better sound quality, which has been my mission this week. Previously, what I would have done is gone to Google, and I would have typed something in. Google wouldn't have given me the answer. It would have given me a bunch of websites which claim to have the answer. I would then have gone through, and I'm starting to compile different bits of information, log it in my head. And then I might draw up a sort of mental list of 3 or 4, which I might then research further and then make a purchase. On GPT, this is completely different. You might say something like, which is the best mic for iPhone using Lightning connector so I can make videos on TikTok? And it would then give you an answer, right? So it's a completely different proposition. And just like when Google took over Yellow Pages, it was so obvious that this was the next generation. I feel like a similar sort of thing here. So I found myself using ChatGPT over Google within 1 day of playing with this tool. Now, at the stage it's at, really early beginner, you wouldn't use it for everything. So if you did want to find a microphone, for example, you actually wouldn't use ChatGPT because it doesn't have products, you can't shop through it, and it's all fairly limited in that area. But I think as marketers, we cannot underestimate how disruptive this could potentially be. So I think that's the first thing, is that if it disrupts Google, then a lot of what we do on a daily basis is totally different. A lot of how we get our businesses found by potential customers is completely different, because we need to figure out what the recommendation engine is behind these artificial intelligences to make sure that when someone asks for a recommendation, we're being found there. So it's a sort of game changer there. It also potentially disrupts any business which makes money from sharing expertise, because this platform is sort of optimized for answering questions that you might have to ask a professional, for example. So if you're a nutritionist or you're like a fitness person, well, you can go on here and you can type, build me a fitness plan based on this equipment, or build me my recipes and my calorie intake based on my needs, and it will do it. So if I'm a business that's offering those services for clients, I'm thinking, oh, hold on a minute, my clients might be able to actually get that quicker, free. I might need to think about how I play with these tools. So I think it's super disruptive, both in how people find businesses and also what businesses sell. Now, of course, there's always opportunities. Every time there's disruption, there's a challenge, and there are people, like you said, Jess, there are people who will lose their jobs because of this, just like there were Yellow Pages, Google, just like there were printing press, just like there were clothing looms and artisan craftspeople. There will be people who lose their jobs. There will be huge disruption. There will be lots of conversation. There'll be political fallout. This is if it is a paradigm shift that it looks like it could be, there will be all that sort of fallout. But alongside all of that, there's massive opportunity, because this is now a tool that we can play with, that we can optimize, that we can use to supercharge whatever creative or strategic output we have. If you want to build something, you can build it much faster. The possibilities and the opportunities of this they're difficult to comprehend, because they are so broad and so deep. So I'm viewing this as extremely exciting, but it's a big but it's extremely exciting if you're committed to figuring it out, getting to know it, having a play with it, and working out how you're going to use it. It's terrifying if it's just that other thing which you're trying to ignore and you're hoping isn't going to happen, because hoping a new technological revolution isn't going to happen has not historically been a winning strategy. So yeah, gonna be fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I think we're just not going to know how it's going to play out at all until it actually plays out, because obviously we're both quite technological people who are quite connected to that space. So of course we feel like everybody is talking about it, whereas actually maybe people aren't talking about it as much as it feels. We had a question saying, do you have to pay for it right now? I think it depends on the software you are using. ChatGPT is free, but last time I checked, we weren't able to access it right now because so many people are trying to try it out that their servers went wrong. I think the other challenges are that if you are using this as a replacement for knowledge, sometimes it responds with really confident, factually incorrect answers. So you could, let's say you started a business that you don't know too much about yet, you're trying to build your credibility. You could use something like this to create content for your site and then end up saying things that totally ruin your credibility to anybody who's in the know. So you do have to be careful with that. But it's worth keeping an eye on and making sure you're aware of it. If this is the first you're hearing of it, make sure you have a look, because it could just come out of nowhere and destroy everything you love. Which is how I feel about it right now. But we've had a lot of conversations. Oh, I'll let you answer this question and then we will pop on to the next bit of news.
Yes, sorry. I was just going to say, James raised this really interesting point in the comments saying they've been saying that voice search was the next big thing, yet it's still lagging. The average Joe will take forever to catch on. Maybe I'm wrong. I know what you're saying, James, and you know I've personally been sneering at voice search being the next big thing since it came out, because voice search was so obviously not the next big thing, because Google was sort of limited to feeding you information from one place at a time and trying to guess the answer based on not a huge, massive amount of knowledge, but actually just each individual website's knowledge. It basically, voice search is the featured snippet, right? And the featured snippets are very rarely perfect. They're still useful, but they're very rarely perfect. And particularly, e-commerce through voice search, never taken off. Amazon are just in the process of killing some of their Alexa division, not literally, but killing the project to an extent, because the voice search piece hasn't taken off for product purchase in the way that they'd hoped. So I think it's a very sensible caveat. A lot of people got really excited about blockchain and said similar things. The whole world looks completely different now. I understand blockchain and this is the most disruptive technology and people don't get it. And then it turned out that there were no sort of useful applications for it. For me, the difference here is the fact that this already has useful applications. Like, we use AI writing in our content marketing team already. Now, it needs a pilot, it needs somebody to drive it, and it needs somebody to optimize the results, because like Jess said, it can feed you very confident but wrong information. I asked the OpenAI playground today, who is Tim Cameron Kitchen, and it told me that I was leader of an investment firm, Cameron Kitchen Associates, and a philanthropist based in London. That was news to me. So it's not always right. And I think what's important to say is that at the moment, everything that we're playing with and everything we're looking at is pretty early stages. This isn't even the latest tech. This is like their beta version that they're just throwing out there to see what people do with it. I think so. Yeah, I'd say the applications are already there. We can already see how we would use this. We can already see that the results are better than what we would get elsewhere for some queries. And I would also look at the level of the people that are getting excited about this. So employee number 23 at Google, who created or was in charge of Gmail and made their "Don't Be Evil" tagline, he gives Google 1 to 2 years lifespan based on this new tool. So he's like an educated person in this space, has been there from the start, and he's calling time on the status quo. So yeah, I think it's not voice search. I think it's another level beyond that. It's a paradigm shift rather than voice search is essentially a different implementation of the same technology. This is a different technology.
Completely. Well, we will hop on to the next bit of news, because else we could definitely talk about this for the entire podcast, which isn't in our best interest. But the next very, very quick bit of news before we hop on to discussing this week's video is that TikTok and YouTube have released their top lists for the year, their top creators and their top breakout creators, as well as their top advertisers. And if you are doing any marketing either on TikTok or YouTube, or doing any video marketing in any form, it's definitely worth looking at these creators even if you're like, well, these people aren't in my niche, Mr. Beast is at the top of the YouTube, why should I look at that? Because these creators are getting attention and doing things in ways that will benefit you. Maybe the content type or the topics they're covering won't benefit you, but it could potentially be the way they keep their viewers around, the way they pick up on trends, the way they use a current trend in their own style. And it's definitely worth looking at that as well. And that's a nice segue into our YouTube channel, Tim, and the wonderful video that was released this week about e-commerce digital marketing.
Yeah, well, I before we move on there, Jess, I just wanted to ask you, because you're very TikTok and YouTube native, you're the cool one. What were there any surprises or any sort of common threads that you noticed about the top YouTube and TikTok creators this year? Anything that was sort of stood out to you?
Yeah. So with YouTube, if you are a white man, you're probably going to do really well because I would say pretty much, I think there was one woman in the whole list, including the breakout list as well.
Wow.
Yeah, which is quite shocking. And maybe like 3 people of color. So it's very, very bland list. But in terms of content, there was a lot of high speed content, definitely some stuff that was targeted towards younger audiences. But again, there is definitely things that you can pick up from this and convert it to your own content and your own audience, even if it's just you're like, I really like the way they did this, or I can see that this is the pacing. So that was one thing that I did notice. On TikTok, much more challenging to sort of figure out what content was good, because TikTok are quite wonderful and do the whole of Europe, but that means that half the videos don't know what they're saying, which is on me for not knowing enough languages. But you can still visually look at some stuff. I was more interested in YouTube. In terms of advertising on YouTube as well, Super Bowl ads did really well. So there is a challenge there. If you are a smaller business and you're seeing these ads and you're thinking, I can't do this, I can't get these famous people, I can't do, this big budget, you've got to look at it and see, okay, what can I do? What's actually the draw here? Is there a really heartfelt message? Is there something like that I can use in my own ads? So definitely have a look at all the creators. I think the YouTube one is literally, if you just type into Google, like top 10 YouTube creators of 2022, it should come up on their official website. And I think TikTok was called the TikTok Awards 2022. So yeah, definitely worth checking out for sure.
Great comment about pacing as well. I feel like that's one of the biggest shifts that's going on with content consumption at the moment. We're noticing that, I'm finding my own attention, the more time I spend on TikTok, the more I'm finding my attention drift, particularly on YouTube or any sort of longer form stuff, even in TV. And I think whilst a lot of this stuff is happening to younger audiences than maybe listeners, target customers are going to be, just as Facebook used to be for people at school, and that was basically what it was when it first came out. This will seep through all of society, or most of society, and what happens here, what happens in the bleeding edge in TikTok will eventually make its way through. And before you know it, your parents are going to be on TikTok, and all the old people are going to be on TikTok, and they're going to be doing their old people stuff on TikTok. It's about looking at the direction of travel, isn't it? They already are. Over
Completely.
55, fastest growing demo. So yeah, really interesting. Okay. This week's video topic then. So the video that we published this week was all about e-commerce digital marketing in 2023. Jess, anything that stood out for you? I'm assuming everyone has already watched this, of course.
Yeah.
If you haven't, then go and check out our YouTube channel.
But check it out after this, thanks.
Yeah.
So one thing that you brought up, Tim, which I thought was really great, was a discussion about pop-ups. So you said about pop-ups and that people hate them. And it's this well-known thing that pop-ups suck and we hate them. But actually, I think there's a different type of pop-up. I think there's those pop-ups that we associate with like Y2K, and like viruses all popping up on a page where you can't access anything. And then there's the pop-ups that are like, get 10% off, that I try and trigger when I'm on a website so that I can get that discount. I'm like, oh, this is a new website, I want to buy from them, I'm going to wait till I can get that 10%. So I thought that was really interesting. Do you see in the consumer space that people really do hate pop-ups, or do you think it's actually because a lot of people in the marketing space or in the business owner space are only familiar with pop-ups in that kind of Y2K way. That was a really roundabout question, but I hope it made sense.
Yeah. I think it's the the user testing video, the feedback, or the heat mapping where you can see them going straight for the X. I think pop-ups have always been one of those things where there is a bit of a trade-off. If you just wanted to make something that was purely user focused, it's a bit like what we talk about, with YouTube. Like, where do we put the call to action in the YouTube video? Because if you just wanted to make something purely for the people, you would not have a call to action. But if you wanted to make something that was purely for business, you'd pack it with ads. And I think it's the same with pop-ups. So whether you're looking at heat maps or user recordings, or you're getting, live user feedback on a website, the pop-up, the keyword for pop-up is annoying, right? These annoying pop-ups, they're everywhere. Oh, I'm to close another pop-up. And then it's that thing of, I know they're annoying, but when you look at analytics and what they do to your conversion rate, we're going to keep them despite them being annoying. So I don't think they're going anywhere. I remember interviewing someone on the Exposure Ninja podcast a while ago with a really interesting angle on pop-ups and this type of thing. And they viewed it as more like an incentive. So you could incentivize, a bit like what you're doing here. So you're saying, I know that I'm going to get a pop-up offering me a 5 or 10% discount for sign up. So I want that. I don't care about the annoyance. I just want that thing. And it's seeing if there's a way of implementing that so that it's least annoying. So for example, a pop-up, as soon as the page loads, that can be really pretty annoying because you don't yet have the context to know that discount has any value. Whereas if I land on a product page and then I get a pop-up, okay, that's less annoying to me because I'm a little bit further towards that purchase. That 10% now has higher value to me than if I just land on I land on a blog page and there's information, but you're already popping me up. So I think it's about where you trigger that and making sure that the incentive feels like an incentive and it has enough context to be valuable.
I think my favorite implementation of that kind of discount thing is when you are at checkout and it says, don't forget, if you're a new visitor, you can use 10% off. But I suppose it's unless people have actually got to checkout, which maybe they need to be pulled in with the discount and then pulled in with the email automation, it doesn't necessarily work. But I have to say, if you're one of those brands that says, don't forget there's a discount on at the end of checkout, you're my favorite. And I feel a lot of affinity towards you. But obviously I already need to be at that purchasing stage. Do you have anything else you'd like to say about the video this week, Tim?
No, other than people should be collecting data. So whether it's a pop-up or whether it's some other incentive, we're talking about e-commerce marketing, but I think the race is on to capture customer data. The reason people have pop-ups as soon as the page loads is because then they can get you on browser abandonment, they can get you on basket abandonment, even if you didn't get to basket. So that really is the play for next year is capturing customer data as soon as you can and as much of it as you can, particularly now that we're getting less data. Facebook, the iOS 14.5, we've got Google Chrome ending cookie use at some point that they keep kicking it down the road. But the game is all about collecting as much customer data as you can. That should be the aim of every single website, whether you're e-commerce or lead gen. So just go and collect some data and do what you have to do to get it.
Completely. Yeah, it's a very important element. And I think there's definitely something in there, Tim, about what you said about we do want the website to be user-friendly as possible, but sometimes we have to make a sacrifice, for instance, including pop-ups, because we have our goals and we need to make a sale. If it was just about user experience, we'd never sell anything.
Exactly. You are not a charity.
Completely.
You have a brand of the week, which I actually don't know. So thank you for introducing me to a new brand every single week.
It was actually Sam who introduced me to this brand in our group chat. And I thought it was very, very interesting. And it was another one of those where I saw it at face value and thought, this is fantastic. And then as I started to get a little bit further in, I was like, there's so much opportunity. But I think they've got something really good here. So the brand is called Status, and they are a headphone brand. They sell over-ear headphones, in-ear headphones. And they have absolutely fantastic positioning in that they are putting themselves as the brand for audiophiles. If you love great headphones that sound amazing and you know all these things about audio, these headphones are for you. So even like as soon as you land on the homepage, the first thing you see is like a deconstructed earbud. So it's got like all the different pieces of what goes inside these headphones all laid out, and it's like amazing inside. You know, they know that their target audience want to see all this technical stuff. They want to see what is inside. Yeah, I need to remember that this is a podcast recording, Tim. So even though you brought up this wonderful website, I need to make sure that I describe it very, very well. But yeah, so it's very much targeted at these experts. They even have a quiz at the top, which is like, think you're an audiophile, take our quiz, which I disqualified myself from on the first question because I was like, I don't know the answer. And I still don't know how many points I got. They eventually sent me an email to be like, check your answers. But by the time I got the email, it was really delayed. And by the time I got it, I couldn't even remember what answers I put in. So when you get to the end, it will say like, you know, I said that I was like newbie or something. So from these two things, I was like, this is a brand directed exactly at experts in audio. And then as I started to learn more about them, this started to disintegrate a little bit. So I don't know if they're in the process of repositioning themselves or if they are trying to cater to everyone. But one thing that stood out to me, and this is a conversation we have quite often, and it was actually that I thought the products were too cheap. So at the moment, the flagship headphones, they're best of the best. Sorry, not their best of the best, but their flagship headphones are £65 when they're not on sale. Their core headphones are £82, 140 for the earbuds. And it just feels almost like not expensive enough for the people they're targeting. And I remember looking at it and thinking this must be wrong, because I felt like when I'd been on the website before and looked at it, I thought this is really expensive, but that wasn't actually what happened. I think I must have just assumed that. So I think actually some people who are coming onto this website and see the positioning, see it being dismantled, see them using the word audiophile, doing this really technical quiz, would be expecting more expensive headphones, because often we associate price with quality, which isn't always true. But then doing a bit more research, there was some parts that were like, you know, we want to make it affordable for everyone. And then also there was some phrasing that said, like, I think it's in the sound standard section of the website, it says, for everyone who loves music is an audiophile. But I love music and I did the audiophile quiz and was absolutely clueless. So I think this brand has such a good option to position themselves as the brand for people who really love music, know music super well. And then but unfortunately, it's kind of diluted itself down into being a brand for everyone, which can be a good idea. But I feel like they could do so much more. Like, they've got all these other things as well. Like, they don't put logos on their products because they know that audiophiles kind of don't want to be defined by a logo. And they just use these tiny little serial numbers that are like etched in and stuff like that. And I feel like everything about it has been created for a very specific area of people. And then they've been like, actually, it's for everyone. So yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts, Tim, on that. I
think you've nailed the kind of interest about this company. This is super fascinating. There's a couple of brands that I can't remember either of their names, but there was one that was positioned. They're a wine company, and their positioning was, when you're buying a cheap bottle of wine, here's what you're paying for, right? And it showed that in the wine, it showed like 80% or whatever is like supermarket markup, and then 10% is the wine, and then 10% of the packaging or whatever. And their thing was that we're going to sell you, our wine's going to be cheaper, but it's actually going to be better. You're spending more of your money on the actual wine, which I think is a really compelling story to tell if you're a direct consumer brand like this is, and you want to sell at the luxury end, but you still want to be accessible, right? You're saying basically, you know, when you're buying a pair of Apple AirPods, what are you actually buying? You're spending X amount on, you know, the fancy Apple thing and the research and development, and then you're actually only spending a tiny amount of money on the AirPods. And you could do a similar sort of thing here, right? You could say when you're buying for most brands, you're buying like billboards and TV advertising, all this gumph that you don't actually need. What you're buying with us is just the sound quality. So that allows us to make a better product at a cheaper price. And then it makes that cheaper price feel more consistent. What you're talking about is that dissonance between this is a higher quality product than you're used to, but the price is cheaper. That doesn't feel real to us. That for me is the danger here. There was a fantastic Instagram, the second brand that this reminds me of, a fantastic Instagram ad campaign from an earphone company where, if Samuel Lloyd's listening, he'll probably know them, but where they gave these earphones to like producers and mixers and mastering engineers, and the video ads were like people's reaction to this incredible sound. And that was such a good way of demonstrating that this was a sort of next level in audio quality. Because the other challenge a company like this has is they're trying to demonstrate audio quality through a web page, which is purely visual. So you don't actually know how good these things sound until you've used them. So it's a very difficult pitch. So you've got to then rely on, which is the bit that's missing for me. Like they've got some reviews, but I'm looking at the reviews thinking, I don't know how qualified these people are. So especially some of the wording that they use makes me think, well, these people aren't like audio experts at all. So do I really trust their opinion? So yeah, I think they've got to find a way of doing the demo in a compelling way that doesn't involve you actually making the purchase. This is why Bose for years gave their, they had a massive money back guarantee of like 30, 90 days, 100 days, whatever. You buy their product, you use it, you fall in love with it. And then if you don't like it after 100 days or something, you can send it back, because they knew this is a new sound technology. We can't demonstrate this through a magazine ad or whatever. So they had to find a way of doing it. So I think you've articulated their challenge perfectly, but I love the angle. I think I love the look of the products is great, particularly the earbuds. I think they look really striking, really different. It's just at the moment, I think it's going to be missing the target. I don't think it's going to be converting anywhere near as well as it actually could do. And it's that positioning piece which is missing for me.
100%. I think I have to add as well, I think it's interesting that you remembered the unique selling points or the positioning of those two other brands, but couldn't remember the names of them. So it could almost be that they went too far the other way of being like, we're the new thing, mystery. But then if you forget, it's not great. Like, but I could see Dale Davies left in the comments of our YouTube live saying Naked Wines was the wine one. And I recognize the adverts that you described for the headphones, but I couldn't tell you which headphones they were. But very interesting.
Yeah, I think some of this is like, I'm not the audience for the wines or the headphones, really. I'm not bothered about the sound quality. So I think if you were, then you'd be motivated to make a purchase. You might care more about that space. I've never drunk a glass of wine I've enjoyed, so I'm definitely not a Naked Wines customer. But yeah, thanks, Dale, for the reminder.
Very, very helpful. Tim, your Exposure Ninja campaign or lesson of the week, what have you got in store for us this week? Because I know we got a bit carried away last week and didn't have time to fit it in. So I'm very keen to hear what you have to say this week.
We did. So every week on the podcast, we, on this new format, we share a lesson or a learning from one of the campaigns that we work on, or that, we consult on, or that we run. And this week I wanted to do something a little bit different and talk about Exposure Ninja's own marketing, because I feel like sometimes you need an outsider to give you a bop around the side of the head to remind you of some core principles. So Exposure Ninja, since we started the company, I remember sitting in a room with a guy in our latest video. I think I talk about it. And he said, no one's ever going to buy from a company called Exposure Ninja. That's a ridiculous name. Like, no one's going to take you seriously. It sounds unprofessional, blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking he doesn't get it. Like, whether you're selling marketing or whether you're selling accountancy, like, you can be fun. You can be interesting. You can be entertaining. You can be the most boring B2B in the world. I mean, if you're in like corporate reputation management, maybe you might want to be a bit boring. But other than that, you can be fun. You can be interesting. And I think over the years, as we've worked with larger and larger companies, we've become a little bit boring. And, we tone down our branding. We tone down our look and feel. We've got this amazing character Shinobi. If you're watching the video, you can see behind me, but we never, we were all very cautious about overusing Shinobi and making ourselves look too playful. And we had a meeting with one of our board advisors, amazing guy, Andrew Block, who from Frank PR, he's Lord Sugar's PR guy, and was at least partially responsible for the meerkats from Compare the Market. And he told us a story about Compare the Market and said that, they were quite close to being in serious trouble, that business. And the meerkats, whilst, I've laughed at how stupid it is to have like these basically semi-racist meerkats representing an insurance comparison website. He said that they did wonders for that business. They saved the business because they built something about the company which was more than just insurance comparison, and it made it sort of a household name. And it made us reflect on Exposure Ninja and how we've sort of muted our own brand over the years in order to try and appeal to larger clients. And I just thought how interesting. We spend our entire lives telling other businesses what to do with their marketing. And yet we were sort of blind to this. We needed an outside perspective. And it made me think two things. Firstly, the value of an outside perspective. And sometimes you need someone who isn't so familiar with your business that they're not, emotionally attached to any one side of an argument. You need somebody else to just come in and say, look, here's what I think. Someone who's qualified and, has a good track record in this space. And then the second thing is just to emphasize again, there is absolutely no need to be boring as a credibility tool. Being boring is not a credibility tool. Being boring is not a selling point. And yet so much of particularly B2B branding, but a lot of branding is about being boring, looking professional and looking safe. I'll tell you what's professional. It's being really good at what you do and being able to demonstrate results of the things that you do. That's professional, right? People work with all sorts of crazy characters who aren't quote unquote professional, but they work with those people because they get results. So yeah, it was just like a bit of oh mate, what have we done here? But the good news is we got some crazy ideas, Jess. We got some crazy ideas.
Well, I don't know, but I'm getting some good vibes. So that's super exciting. And do you know what's relevant to that is Dale sent me a fantastic post on LinkedIn this morning about my nemesis, the Duolingo TikTok account, because I find the Duolingo TikTok account very funny, but I always feel very conflicted about it. And because it is so off the wall and so different. And in this LinkedIn post, they shared a bit about why they made that decision. And they said, there's only so many ways that we can promote a language learning app. And they made the choice to meet their audience where they were with the jokes they make about Duolingo, with the weird things that people say on Duolingo, or how it feels like the owl is threatening you when you don't do things, and it's very passive aggressive. And they really played into this on TikTok. And we saw the exact same from Ryanair, two of the most popular brands on TikTok. Ryanair absolutely leaned into the fact they are the cheapest. People are constantly complaining. I was on Ryanair, I didn't have any leg room. And they'll make a TikTok saying, you didn't have any leg room, you paid $9.99 for the flight. What do you expect? And they found a way to make it, they could just show us amazing holiday destinations or luxury things. And that's not what Ryanair's about. Ryanair is about getting the cheapest flight possible to a random destination that you didn't expect. The amount of times that my siblings come to me and go, going on holiday next week because Ryanair were doing £9 deal. So I think, Duolingo, I think they're very extreme. I love them and hate them. Maybe I love to hate them, who knows? But I think they're a really good example of how you can take something. Language learning was a constant pain for me at school. I can imagine it was for many other people, and they've made it really fun. And when I was learning Japanese, Duolingo was my go-to app, and I've had a streak of like 170 days, I think. So, their app is good, and the way they've managed to get it in people's brains and reach people is through their TikTok. So I'm being silly. I'm really pushing the limits. So yeah, really, really good topic, Tim, for sure.
And I think what you've said there about both Duolingo and Ryanair is they've adopted a personality, a single personality on social, particularly on TikTok. And they might have slightly different personalities across different channels. But for me, most businesses haven't got to grips with social media. They've never been able to do it. They've never been able to post in a way that actually gets traction or customers. So they'll post stuff out, but it will get very little engagement. And it's terrifying to nail yourself down to one personality and say, right, we're going to be a cuddly owl that makes really super risque Dua Lipa jokes and all this stuff, and is like slightly deprecating and takes on Google Translate or whatever. It's very scary to do that, but it's actually kind of required if you're going to get traction in social media. I found out today that the Ryanair TikTok account, there's one sign off. There's one person who signs that off. And again, it's pretty scary to put that in place because
it is.
We saw, we're about to cover some marketing fails. What can happen if stuff goes wrong and how quickly things can go viral, good viral or bad viral. it's very scary to do those things. But if if marketing is going more TikTok, it might not be, but if marketing is going more to that route, businesses are going to have to adopt a personality, because the stuff on TikTok that gets traction and the stuff on social more generally that gets traction has a personality. So there's going to become this point where even boring companies, they either have to have a figurehead or a face or a bunch of faces, or they adopt some sort of personality. And I think it's something that most marketing teams aren't well set up to do, and it's going to be painful.
Yeah,
is my
definitely agree with you. Yeah, I think sign off does limit people, especially if there's a trend on somewhere like TikTok where it is so quick, and sometimes you can't explain it. Some of the stuff that goes on TikTok, I'm like, I do not have time to explain this to you. Just let me make this weird video. Like, I can't go through the layers and layers of how deep this is. Like, just let me make this video. So yeah. But talking of, as we said, not, having sign-offs that are too quick or not totally being on top of stuff, I will start with my second marketing fail of the week, which was Balenciaga. So if anybody is, connected to any social media, you probably would have heard what happened with Balenciaga this week. I will try to discuss it in the most sensitive way possible. Basically, they had some ads going live, which had child models, quite young, maybe 3 or 4, holding bears that were bags that looked like they were wearing adult clothes, let's say, things that aren't appropriate for children to interact with. And after seeing this, people then spotted some other ads that had copies of court rulings that were discussions on child exploitation, like in the bags. It was just a really strange combination of things. And whether or not it was a case of literally accidental or not, it definitely caused a stir. And Balenciaga maybe didn't handle it in the best way. They did a huge jump and pointed in every direction and said it was the photographer, it was this, it was this, it was this. There was stuff like the photographer always does photography of children. So naturally, it makes sense they would hire this person to do a photo shoot with children. The photographer wouldn't have made that decision themselves. And there was all these things. They also threatened to take legal action against the creative directors and whatnot. And even Kim Kardashian was like, I'm going to be questioning my relationship with them. And I think she's quite a big spokesperson for them, been connected to them for a long time. But then 3 days later, after everything, Balenciaga took responsibility for it all, made one post where they took responsibility for some of it, not all of it, deleted that, posted it as just a story, made another post. And it was just very much felt like nobody knew what they actually wanted to do. And then they sort of said, oh, we don't know how this happened. But they're a huge company. And it's sort of the difference between having very limited approvals, let's say, to put something quick out on TikTok and not having enough approvals, or not having enough, as we discussed on the podcast last week, not having enough sense checks to say what might be wrong with this image. And so I think people are going to be seeing that company in a very different light. I mean, they deleted all their social media posts on Instagram. I think they deleted their Twitter account. And the lesson for me, really, there was 2 lessons here. Check your marketing campaigns and make sure you've sense checked them, especially if you're dealing with protected groups like children, like minorities, because you need to be double, triple, quadruple checking every single thing. And the second one is that stick to your story. And maybe I'm not saying that Balenciaga should have continued with a £25 million lawsuit, but that's a very big lawsuit to make a decision on a whim to then retract. And I think that's just almost made them look worse in the long run, really.
So, yeah, it's kind of like, we made this thing. Oh, who did it? Oh, it's you. You did it. Oh, I'm so angry about it. And that, the agency obviously like, well, hold on. You briefed us. You signed it off multiple times throughout the process. You were there. Like, what? And they're like, oh, no, okay, all right. No, it wasn't you. It's like they were being caught. They've been caught firstly running the campaign and then being caught a really, really pathetic attempt at covering up. It's just really bad crisis management, isn't it?
It was.
Such a cluster mess up. It was just extraordinary. Just extraordinary to see.
100%.
Particularly for a brand that's so based on perception and based on, people's feelings. And Balenciaga is a company that can literally stick their logo on the front of a hat that's pretty a pretty ordinary looking product and charge like 10, 15, 20 times as much. So they understand customer perception. They understand how people think. That's how they've built their entire brand. So it's extraordinary that they weren't able to at least see this coming.
Completely. It could have been that they got too comfortable, which actually leads me on to my second brand fail of the week, which will be a speedy one, which was since we're live on YouTube, sorry if you're listening to the podcast afterwards, but since we're live on YouTube, please comment in the chat the last Disney movie that you remember hearing about, because I can nearly guarantee you it won't be Strange World, and it probably won't even be Lightyear either. And basically Disney had a movie go out this week called Strange World, and it's on its way to lose 100 million at the box office. And Lightyear, which was like the Buzz Lightyear spin-off, was also a huge flop. Now, I only first heard about Strange World when I was hearing people say that it was a flop. And Strange World checks all my boxes. We have LGBTQ characters, we have people of color, we have loads of, diverse characters. And I hadn't heard about it, which is really strange for this to happen to me. So I was like, what is going on? Now, there is some stuff happening at Disney where they kicked Bob Chapek out, who was the new CEO, and brought Bob Iger back in. There's so many people involved. I should know because I'm a bit of an animation fanatic, but they've had a lot of things move around. And my worry is, one, that maybe they thought that they were untouchable. Encanto did so well. Frozen did so well. We don't need to promote. It's fine. We can save some money. We've got negative balance sheets for November. Let's save some money on advertising, because people will watch. And that is not what has happened. But I hope that by bringing, I think it is Bob Iger. I think I'm getting all these names mixed up.
Iger's coming back in.
Iger's coming back. Yes. Iger's coming back. But I was like, are they really both called Bob, or am I just messing up my words? I think that's just me messing up. But anyway, I hope that they're not just going to do the same old. I feel like we've seen no innovation in terms of marketing from Disney for a very, very long time. Most of the time I'm just like, oh, I saw a YouTube thing, or I saw somebody talk about it on Twitter. So I hope we're going to see some innovation. But really, the lesson here is that don't rely on past success for future success. If you have one product that did really, really well, don't expect everything else to do that well, or be like, well, we only promoted this on TikTok, so it's obviously going to be successful. And I think people also run into that issue if they see another business similar to them blow up on TikTok, and they're like, we just need to do that and we'll have the same result. It's not necessarily going to happen. And you need to make sure you're diversifying your marketing and not just thinking, oh, we'll go easy on this launch because we've had success recently. People will still be thinking about us. No, they're not. As Tim said earlier, people have very short attention spans. So yeah, be very, very careful. And also, if your thing fails, there's going to be a lot more awareness and a lot more news about your thing failing compared to your previous successes than there will be about how good your thing is. I still don't really know what Strange World is about. And it's just like, all I know is that it's flopped. So yeah, two very, very important lessons there from our marketing fails of the week.
Yeah, great lesson. Cool. Marketing question of the week. So every week we answer one of your marketing questions. You can email us, hello@exposureninja.com. And if you put in your subject line podcast in capitals, then as long as it's a question, we might read it out on the show and we might try and answer it. So this week's question, Jess,
Airbnb has destroyed its website, according to commenter DaVinci Resolve How, who commented on a previous video. It's actually our video about Airbnb. They were saying that they feel like they've destroyed their website. What do we think? Because I expected to go on the Airbnb website and see something absolutely tragic, and I was pleasantly surprised. I'll do my best to describe it to podcast listeners while Tim brings it up. But basically, Airbnb used to have kind of a basic landing page. When I wrote about it anyway, it was quite a basic landing page. It had a picture of like a yurt or something and was like, your next adventure. And then you could enter at the top, where your dates and where you wanted to go and if you're flexible and if you weren't. And now when you land on their homepage, they have all icons along the top of all the different places that you can visit. And straight away, you're seeing the products, essentially, the places that you can book. There are some downsides to this, but I actually really like it. But I'd like to know your initial thoughts, Tim.
My initial thoughts, this is another business moving away. So there's two ways. There's search and browse, right? Most websites have search traffic and they have browse traffic, and historically marketing has been targeting search traffic like Google, and then TikTok has made people think about browse traffic, and now a lot of sites and social networks have some form of browse algorithm that's designed to sort of show you stuff which might pique your interest so they can spur you to purchase even if you weren't originally thinking of purchasing, which is exactly what it looks like they're trying to do here, to start this as a sort of inspiration place rather than a find something where you need, Airbnb used to be, I'm going here, I need somewhere to stay on these dates, and here are my criteria, whereas this to me looks more like I just want some inspiration, and it looks like that's what they're kind of going for. Yeah, I mean, from an SEO perspective, I'll be like, where's the copy?
Yeah, that's so true. So
the only
true.
headline is introducing our winter 2022 release. That means absolutely nothing to me.
Yeah,
so I'd love
I
to
did
see
like that pop-up. Let's ignore that pop-up because it was very much aimed at people who wanted to make an Airbnb as well, which just I'm not in that audience, so I was not interested. I am very excited to share what I thought about this because as much as yes, from an SEO perspective, it's not good at all, especially because you're like, where's the copy? Whereas the way that I saw it is I've definitely seen a lot more conversations online where people are saying things like, why get an Airbnb when a hotel is the same price and you get your towels and you get breakfast included? And I agree. I will more often than not now book a hotel because I'm like, well, all my towels are sorted and I don't have to worry. But I think that might be why they're repositioning themselves like this, because pretty much all those icons included across the top are very unique things. Like you've got the log, I think it starts with log cabins, or it did on mine. They have log cabins, castles, yurts, tents, like all these different things. And I think it's because they're trying to reposition themselves as the alternative to a hotel, but not because of price. It's because they're offering unique experiences and places. And so I did think that is probably a really smart move from them, just because they don't totally control the pricing. It's up to the individual host to do that. And if the hosts want to charge more than a hotel, they're going to charge more than a hotel. And Airbnb's gone very, very far away from the air bed and breakfast that it stands for, where it literally was about blowing up an airbed in somebody's house and stopping on an airbed, to being, I want to book a hotel for the weekend. So I think that's why they've repositioned themselves. Definitely.
Bang on.
Yeah. That's my thoughts anyway. And also I thought it skips a step, because you can still search right at the top of the page, but the site is showing you what you can get immediately. You know exactly what you're getting when you're on this site from the get-go, in my opinion. But maybe not. We'll see. It might just be me because I know and have used them for a number of years. But yeah, there we go. That's my insight on that one.
Great shout. So if you've got a question about digital marketing, hit us up, hello@exposureninja.com, and we will do our best to answer it. Jess, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
We will. See you later.